Welcome to The Morning After, episode 24. Thank you for joining us this week. I'm your host, Jared Smith. Very excited to be with you today. This will be the final show of my 30s. I turned 40 years old on Saturday. I had a little ceremony this Saturday night to commemorate the final days of my 30s. I had some very close friends over. We had a little ceremony. I might share the details of that. It was a personal night where I actually did talk a lot about my career, and it was a big part of my career, was a big part of the night. And so maybe I'll share it with you guys at the end of the show. But the bulk of this show is going to be to continue our renovation of what this show is heading into the spring and summer months. I hope you joined us last week when you kind of got a glimpse of it. I actually really enjoyed producing the show last week. I kind of tapped back into my broadcasting news roots with kind of picking stories that I thought were topical and stories that I thought had a clear left and right angle to it, right and wrong angle to it, that I can kind of share my truth. And that's going to be what this show is going forward. It's going to be less game recaps, less gambling stuff, less betting analysis, and more talking about things that interest me and talking about topics that I think are interesting and things that we can have a discussion about. Obviously, I'm not doing the show live, but I post a lot of clips after the fact, and that's where a lot of the discussion starts. And I hope you learned something. I hope you learned not only a fresh perspective from me. I was thinking about starting to bring guests on the show, not necessarily like sports betting guests to like break down March Madness. I thought about that, but it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like it fit what I was trying to do. I'm thinking about bringing in more lifestyle guests. Like I was going to bring in someone who maybe has experience with fasting. I was going to bring in maybe someone who had experience covering the Olympics and what that was like things that I find interesting from a time, like I need it to be relatively evergreen, right? I can't do something, this is not a daily show. It's a weekly show. So I'm trying to think about outside the box ways to have more higher level conversations about sports and about life and about fitness and about fasting and things that interest me every day, and try to teach people something. And also try to continue to be a voice of truth and reason and logic in a world that seems very illogical and distrustful, frankly. And I think the great, most interesting place to start this week is the Olympics. So first, before we get into that, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe, of course, to the newsletter. It's free. The Substack, the QB Read. I'm starting to churn out those off-season pieces. If you're interested in more high-level NFL stuff, breaking down coaching changes and philosophies and things as we kind of move forward in the off-season, right? That's where a lot of my sports analysis is going to live. This podcast is going to turn more into my lifestyle. And I'm excited to see what direction it goes. I think, again, I have some people that I'm talking to that might be interested in picking it up, and putting it on their platform. I won't give any details about that yet because it's still in the very early stages, but that's my goal. The goal is to get it onto a larger platform and to have a place for people to come who can have conversations, and to talk about things that, maybe can be a little uncomfortable to talk about sometimes, but to create a safe space for it. And that's definitely going to be what this podcast is. Whereas the Substack, the Patreon, that's going to be the more traditional sports betting, sports content analysis that you're used to from me. And of course on X, at Jared Smith Bets. But this podcast, the TikTok, the YouTube channel, that's going to be the topical stuff. That's going to be the talking stuff that we're going to sink our teeth into. So let's get into it, because the Olympics just struck me as a very fascinating cover and study this year. So first of all, clap it up. Team Canada. Sorry. USA was the better team on Sunday morning. I know that I think it was Nathan McKinnon said, "I'll let you be the judge who was the better team." That was his post-game quote. The team who had more goals was the better team. And you want to say that Team Canada outshot Team USA? Okay, well, who was stopping those shots? Because what I was watching, Connor Hellebuck was standing on his freaking head. And goaltending is just as big of a part of the game as how many pucks you get on net. So Team USA had the better goaltender. They had a timely goal from an unsung hero, the Boldy kid, fantastic. And then you obviously had the capitalizing of the first chance in overtime. And the pushback is, well, 3-on-3, it's not a good way to settle the game. It's too wide open. I actually agree with that. I don't love the 3-on-3, but you're trying to force an ending because these players have been on the ice for 60 minutes of game time, and you're increasing the volatility level that there will be a goal. However, any Canadian that's mad that 3-on-3 is what decided it, if your team is better, 3-on-3 should favor you because there's more ice or more open ice, and 3-on-3 favors the team with better players. So if you were convinced that Team Canada was better, well, then 3-on-3 should give you a better chance to win. And I just don't buy the argument that Team Canada was better. I'm sorry, you lost the game. So that's the sports side of it. Now we get into the politics side of it. Because unfortunately, when it's the Olympics, even though there should be a separation of church and state, politics is going to seep its way into it. It is okay to feel proud about Team USA winning. There are a lot of people out there who are not political people. They are sports people who feel guilt about rooting for Team USA because of what's being said about the country in the media, right? You had the skier come out and a lot of other athletes say, I have mixed feelings about, being a part of this and representing my country because of what's happening at home. And bringing his political beliefs into a athletic arena. There will inevitably be crossover between politics and the Olympics. You have a bunch of countries coming together. There's obviously going to be politics. I've discussed this on prior shows. The reporters who are there are not political reporters. They shouldn't be. They should be athletic reporters to cover an athletic event. But we live in this era of inserting your opinion into everything and outrage about everything. There has to be outrage about everything today. That is the default reaction. So what the reporters do, and the athletes I think are too naive really to figure it out, the reporters say, I can't just come out with my political opinion because it'll be dismissed. However, if I can indoctrinate this athlete, lead the witness into saying something politically charged while they're on the podium, well, then I can frame it as it's their opinion. And that's what has happened a lot during these games. And that's why you're seeing a lot of that get reported back home. This athlete doesn't want to be here for Team USA because they are not happy with ice. They're not happy with whatever's happening back at home. And I can't stress it enough. The majority of the blame in those scenarios falls on the reporter for asking these questions, leading the witness. There is obviously some blame that falls on the athlete for answering. They could answer in a more neutral way, but it's also okay for them to share their true beliefs. However, they shouldn't be put on the spot like that on the podium at the Olympics. And the point that I'm trying to make here is it's okay to root for athletes that have different political beliefs than you. For example, I have a lot of friends that have different political beliefs than me. However, I like them as a person, and that's what matters more. In this case, you should be judging the athletes on their athletic performances, not on their personal political opinions. Figure skaters, skiers tend to be more left-wing. They tend to be more anti-America. It's still okay to root for them. It's still okay to have pride in your country and root for a skier or a figure skater that doesn't have the same political beliefs as you. The hockey players are more right-wing. It's okay to root for them if you do not share their political beliefs. They are not playing the game for their politics. They're playing to win the game for the gold medal. It is okay to root for athletes who don't share your political beliefs. It is also okay for athletes to not want to share their political beliefs and make the games about them. If an athlete wants to put on their personal platform, I stand with this politician and I don't stand with what's happening here, that's fine. But I've said this on the prior show, and I'll reiterate it again. Reporters going to the Olympics to cover the Olympics should not be inserting political opinions into the mouths of the athletes. You should be going there to cover the games. Did they win? Did they lose? Is there a fun feature story about their family, how they got their start? A lot of these Olympians, especially in the Winter Olympics, these sports are so freaking random. They had these crazy upbringings. Like they were there every day at the slopes when they were 2 years old at 4 a.m. and they had to ski. Like those are the stories we want to hear. I want to know how this person went from child to Olympic champion. I don't care about this 25-year-old's political beliefs as he's skiing down a mountain. It's just not relevant to the games. But I think the reporters are trying to make more of a story out of it because they know it will get clicks. They know it will divide us. The news knows if they come out with politically charged stories, it will get people mad, and people will click and respond and reply, and the algorithm will churn that content. I know that sounds very pragmatic. Trust me, that's how this works. These politicians and the reporters covering them, for the most part, don't care about the full truth. They care about the words that are going to ignite a flame inside of you and get you to click and feel something. That means that they've done their job. Unlike Mike Tirico, one of the classiest, polished, professional broadcasters I've ever watched, has this way of articulating things and knowing what you're feeling and having his style make you feel even more deeply about it. His monologue after Team USA won was incredible. I posted it on my X feed. Feel free to check it out. It is very much what Team USA should be feeling right now, and anyone who is rooting for Team USA. The men's hockey team, the average age of the players is 28 years old. The oldest player, Brock Nelson, was born in 1991. None of them were even close to being alive when Team USA won their last gold medal in men's hockey. They were alive in 2010 when Sidney Crosby had the golden goal for Canada. And they were alive in 2014 when TJ Oshie had that weird penalty shot sequence. But they've been through this kind of failure, always a bridesmaid, never a bride in Olympic men's hockey over the last 2 decades, really 4 decades. And they were alive for a lot of it. They were young kids growing up, loving hockey, watching their idols play, and now they get a chance to live out their dream. I mean, the Jack Hughes picture where he's got the American flag on his back and his bloody face with a missing tooth, like, is that not the most iconic shot you've seen? And Connor Hellebuyck, man, like the picture of him with the save off his stick when the puck like ricocheted sideways, like, just an insane level of competition for Team USA to pull that off. So they were the better team. I know Team Canada and Canadians are pissed off about it. It's okay. Being a little pissed off about something probably makes you a stronger person in the end. They were the better team. They were absolutely the better team. And you give all the credit to Team USA for winning. And you credit Team Canada. They played a hell of a tournament. I will never forget the picture of them being awarded the silver medal, and they give out these stupid Beanie Baby stuffed animals to the silver medalists. And Nathan McKinnon, I posted this picture too on my feed. He gets handed this stupid, I think it's a Labubu, is that what they're called? And he's like looking down at it like, what the fuck is this? Giving a grown man a stuffed animal right after he fails in an athletic event is sick and twisted, but also strangely funny. You know what else is sick and twisted? So I saw this video on TikTok as we wrap up our Olympic coverage here. I saw this video on TikTok. The Summer Olympics versus the Winter Olympics, right? The Summer Olympics actually coming to the States next. We'll get them in, I think, L.A. I don't know if, I think L.A. In 2028. Flag football will be a part of it, which is going to be really cool. But the difference between the Summer Olympics and the Winter Olympics, like how sick and twisted were the people who came up for the sports in the Winter Olympics? Think about it. In the Summer Olympics, it's run far, run fast, throw far, jump high. In the Winter Olympics, it's, okay, here's this 2-foot wide sled. You're going to go face down a mountain with icy curves at about 90 miles an hour. Or you're going to ski about 12 miles cross-country to the point of exhaustion. Then you're going to take a rifle and fire it at a target about 50 yards away and try to hit it. Like, it's just, how bored were they when they were coming up with these sports? And, oh, by the way, if you get hurt at all during this process, we'll call in a helicopter to medevac you out. Like, it's freaking insane. The Winter Olympics, man, some of these sports are absolutely berserk. And compared to the Summer Olympics, which is much more tame, the Winter Olympics is absolutely wild. But awesome job by Team USA. Of course, a double gold in men's and women's hockey. A lot of women won gold and won medals at the Olympics. I don't know if that's actually a trend, if that's normal for the women to have better Winter Olympic medal counts than the men. But I saw that most, I think it was like 70% or 80% of the medalists for Team USA were women. But awesome job. They came in second in the medal count to Norway, who is obviously the Winter Olympics king and queen. But a great job and really a fun 2 weeks as we got to watch these games. And don't let the haters get you down. It is okay to root for Team USA. It is okay to have pride in your country. It is okay to not share the political beliefs of the athletes that you are rooting for. It's okay. You can live in both worlds. There's a lot of gray area in life. Don't be one of these absolutists. It's like one or the other. They are trying to divide us. That is what the media is trying to do. That's what they've been trying to do for years. And this wave of, I don't want to call it misinformation. Let's just call it propaganda, is the latest in that. So go Team USA, Stars and Stripes, awesome stuff. All right, let's move on. I do have an NFL story, actually 2 NFL stories that I want to talk about today. The first is the leadership grid. What is the leadership grid? Well, I'm going to tell you. So I do this every offseason. It is part of my offseason prep. It is one of the first steps in the process, updating the leadership grid. General manager, head coach, offensive coordinator, offensive play caller. Sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's not. Defensive coach or defensive coordinator. And also what scheme the defense is, 3-4 or 4-3. So this leadership grid is almost complete. Almost. We have one position left. The Minnesota Vikings will not hire their GM until after the NFL draft. Don't ask me why. I think that's a dumb decision. But that's what they're going to do. So we have one position that will remain open through the draft. So I'm going to pretty much put a rubber stamp on the leadership grid. Biggest takeaways from the leadership grid this year. Holy shit, was there a lot of change. So we had 10 new head coaches in this cycle, up from 7 last year. 21 new offensive coordinators. There's only 32 teams in the NFL. 21 of them will have a new offensive coordinator next year. Only 17 will have a new offensive play caller, right? Some of the teams that replace their offensive coordinator, the head coach is the play caller, right? The Broncos are one of those teams. The Chiefs are one of those teams. We'll see what Eric Bieniemy does. So not as much changeover in the play caller department, but the offensive coordinator changeover was historic, up from 14 last year. Defensive coordinators, 14 new ones in 2026. So almost half the league has a new defensive coordinator, and that is up from just 10 the prior year. Only 7 teams, and if you want to be technical, New England might be the 8th, but New England technically has a new defensive coordinator, even though Zach Core, who was promoted at the beginning of last year, called the defensive signals after Terrell Williams left the team due to his prostate cancer diagnosis. And Zach Core called the signals all year, and then they just gave him the defensive coordinator job in the offseason. So technically, I think New England doesn't have a new defensive coordinator, but officially they do. So whatever. You want to call it 7, you want to call it 8, doesn't matter. A very small amount of teams have the same offensive play caller, defensive play caller, head coach combination in 2026. Way down from last year. Almost twice the amount of teams last year had that same battery in place. The leadership grid is in constant flux. What does it mean for you as a fan and a bettor going forward in the NFL? A lot of changes. You could completely flip things around in one season. We've seen this many times in both directions, up and down. So study that. Use, and I'll post the leadership grid in full soon. I don't know when, soon. I'll post it on my X account. Use this as a tool. I'll post other charts and graphs throughout the course of the offseason. The schedule matrix is another one that's very popular. right? All like the rest and the way that the teams kind of, the path the teams are going to take throughout the year, and the primetime games and all that stuff, like all these little colors, and it's a cool little chart. People love it. The leadership grid is another one of those tools to put in your toolbox. So when you're doing your research about these teams over the next few months, you can pull up this chart and be like, all right, well, this team's got a new OC, new DC, new head coach, a lot's changing. The other interesting thing is the teams that didn't have any change. Why did they not have any change? For example, Carolina Panthers. Oh, maybe that's a positive sign. Not so fast, my friend. The other side of the coin is if a program or if a franchise didn't have a lot of coaches getting poached off of their staff, well, then maybe the staff wasn't very good in the first place, right? Because if the one constant in the NFL is coaches moving up the ladder very quickly, very rapidly, well, if you have a staff that is not elevating after 1 or 2 seasons, maybe that's not a very good staff. And I think that is also something. Now, that might not be the case with every team, but I think Carolina is a good example where it might actually be the case that it's a bad thing that they don't have a lot of turnover with their staff, because that means their staff might suck. So I honestly think it's a really interesting exercise in discernment when you look at these off-season changes and how the pieces are moving around the chessboard. So I wanted to mention that the leadership grid is something that is very important in the NFL as we get to this February-March period, as we transition from 2025 and we turn the page to 2026. The other NFL story I wanted to get to, and this one tickled me. It really did. So there is a rumor, I guess you want to call it more than a rumor at this point, that the Bears are moving to Indiana. The Chicago Bears are moving to Indiana. Why? Makes sense. The city of Chicago owns their building, so the Bears have to lease the building. This means 2 things. A, there's no equity there for Chicago and for the franchise. B, they don't have control of the building in the offseason. If they want to book events there, if they want to run things their way, they have no control. I understand why Chicago fans are upset, but I have to urge you to understand their side of it. This is a business. Football is a business. I know it's a children's sport, and these guys get paid millions of dollars to play a sport that you played when you were a kid. It's a business at the highest level. I'm sure the city of Chicago is ripping off the Bears. I'm 100% sure of it. You see what's happening in Chicago right now with crime and political mistrust. I'm sure the Bears are getting a short end of the deal here. Maybe it's a negotiating tactic. Maybe the Bears are saying, we really want to stay in Illinois, but financially it's not very smart for us. So let's figure out a way to get a better deal. Well, how do you get a better deal? You negotiate hard, and you say, if you don't give us this deal, we're going to leave. And maybe that's the only card that they can play. Maybe it's all a bluff. I don't know. I'm not privy to that kind of stuff. But I do know that I've been a Jets fan since birth in the late 80s, and I've never watched my team play a game in the state of New York, even though that's where I was born, and they are the New York Jets. They've been playing in New Jersey since, I think, 1983. The New York Giants have been playing in New Jersey since even before then. The Meadowlands opened in the mid-'70s. So this is not unprecedented for major market teams to move locations outside of the state that they are technically designated for and play games in that state because of financial reasons. And it won't be the last time it happens either. So I understand Bears fans having a gripe against having to drive to Indiana to watch their team play, but you also have to understand that this is a business. And if they do move out of the state, it'll be a business decision. I went to a lot of Jets games at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. Pain in the ass to get to from the city. Trust me. Not fun. It's great if you live in Northern Jersey and you're a Jets fan, and you're in great shape. The problem is most Jets fans are from Long Island. Why? Because the Jets used to play at Shea Stadium. Most Giants fans are Yankees fans. Why? Because the Giants used to play at Yankee Stadium. Then they finally got their own stadium. The problem is they probably couldn't afford the taxes in the state of New York, so they had to move to New Jersey. This is not unprecedented. It has happened before, a long time ago. And like I said, even if it doesn't happen this time, it's likely it'll happen again at some point. So I understand your frustration, Bears fans, but it's business. Speaking of business, I think the NBA's got a little bit of a problem on their hands. So we know that the NBA has been hit with a major gambling scandal. I think 2 of them in the last year. That's not what this story is about. This story is about tanking. Now, you want to say this has something to do with gambling? Okay, I can buy that. But this story is specifically about teams tanking for draft position, not for gambling reasons. They're tanking because they want more lottery balls and they want a better chance of getting the number 1 pick. So the NBA just recently fined the Jazz and the Pacers for sitting healthy players. $500,000 for Utah and $100,000 for Indiana, which in the grand scheme of an NBA franchise's budget is a drop in the bucket. But at least the league is doing something to try to curve this problem. It has been a problem for years. And now Adam Silver's finally pushing back about it. Why? Well, because the gambling people are getting pissed, which is ironic in its own way. I honestly think you can't find your way out of this. The only way to solve the tanking problem in the NBA is to eliminate the format of the current draft lottery and to not incentivize teams to lose. If there is any incentive to have more losses than the team next to you in terms of getting a better draft pick, you can bet your ass teams are going to cut corners to try and get more losses. And I've said this on the show before about the NFL. Tanking is not done on the field during the games. When the games are happening, the players are playing hard. Tanking is done during the week when teams are deciding who to play. That is when tanking is done. So the way that this story is being framed is that the NBA has a tanking problem. It's true. The NBA actually really has a governing problem. It has a problem with the owners and the front office executives not caring about the product, caring more about their draft stock. So how do you change that? Well, you eliminate the rule that says if you lose, you get a better draft pick. It's a pretty simple change. We need more transparency with the draft lottery. We need more transparency with the drafting lottery process. And frankly, we just need to get rid of it. We just need to figure out a way at the end of the season to give teams draft picks that accurately represent what their needs are. I don't know what that is. I don't get paid enough to figure that out. But we need to figure it out because it's clearly a problem. And if you do have games that are being decided by players that shouldn't be on the floor, that's a bad look for the league. And I just hope that it's not something that continues. I hope that they are able to find some kind of solution to this. But it seems like steps are being made. Adam Silver at least is taking steps. Maybe they're not the best steps, but at least he's taking steps. I think in general we just need to get rid of the lottery period, and we need to find a new way to pick the draft order. I don't know what that way is. I don't know. Maybe you draw straws. Maybe you have some kind of term. I always say incentivize teams to win, not lose. That's how you get a better product. Like maybe the teams that don't make the playoffs at the end of the season, maybe they all go in a tournament and the winner gets the number 1 pick. Hey, listen, you heard it here first, unless it doesn't happen. All right, another negative story that really was weird, off the charts weird. So last week, Tony Clark resigned as the union director of Major League Baseball. And I know you're thinking, oh, like what happened? Like did he not agree with the way that negotiations were going or some kind of like, business reason why he left? No. He left because he was having an inappropriate relationship with his sister-in-law, who is also a union member, an employee. Wild story. I honestly, I don't know how some people look themselves in the mirror when they wake up every day, because for that to happen, I think just makes baseball's union so much weaker. And baseball's historically had a very strong union. I mean, the most lockouts have been in baseball over the course of, and the most strikes have been in baseball over the course of the last 100 years. So baseball historically has had a very strong union. That's why there's no salary cap. But I think this obviously weakens the union. And I think what we are going towards is an inevitable lockout after this season. I hope I'm wrong. And if I end up being wrong, feel free to clip this and say you're wrong, you're a clown, because I'd be happy to be wrong because I love baseball. But I think there's a strong possibility that the union's positions weaken significantly after this, and there's a lockout after this season when the labor deal expires for Major League Baseball. So lawyers are going to get involved. This is going to be a weird story. You haven't heard the last of it. When a story breaks like this at a position of such power and height, in addition to the fact that the labor deal is about to expire and they're going through intense negotiations, bad news, really bad news. So I'm concerned for the future of Major League Baseball. This is going to be a very interesting season. I love baseball. For those of you who have followed me for a long time, other than football, I'd say baseball is my second favorite sport to bet on, to watch, to get involved with. I played growing up. The nerfy-yerfy stuff's kind of my niche. I would be devastated if baseball went into a lockout. I don't know if they'd ever recover from that, honestly. There's so many other options for sports fans now, and people are sick of this lockout, rich owners and rich players, wanting, more millions of dollars. People are sick of it. So I don't know how it would recover. The last strike in 1994, it took the home run race, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa home run race in 1998 to really reinvigorate the game about 4 years later. So I don't know what the outcome will be if they do have a lockout, but this story, in addition to the other things I'm hearing, is pushing me towards thinking there will be a lockout in Major League Baseball in 2027, which would significantly hurt the growth of the game. Whew. All right. Before we wrap up the show, so I'm going to share this story. I was debating on whether or not I wanted to share this story on the podcast. It's a very personal story to me. But that's what this podcast is all about. And if I'm not being authentic and transparent about my life, especially with things that have to do with my career, then I feel like I'm not doing the listeners, I'm doing the listeners a disservice. Because I think the reason that I believe this podcast is different from other podcasts is the host gets it. He is not in this for personal glory or fame. He is in this to be a truth seer, a truth teller, and a revealer of truth about what he is seeing in the sports world. And that's what happened to me on Saturday night. So I had a ceremony on Saturday night. So I turned 40 this Saturday. So I had a week left in my 30s. And I thought to myself, I really want to be intentional about celebrating not only this decade, which has been a huge decade for me, not only personally, but professionally. I wanted to share, I wanted to be very intentional about celebrating that. So first, the backstory. I'm very lucky. Ever since I was a kid, I've known what I've wanted to do with my life. You're watching it right now. You're listening to it right now. This is what I love. This is my passion. This is my purpose. I'm a storyteller. I love watching sports. I love regurgitating and absorbing everything happening, regurgitating it back to the audience and telling you what matters and why it matters. That's my passion. I love being around the game, all games, any game. I love the energy that sports brings. It brings people together. It is an energy giver. And I love the team aspect of it. I think there's a lot to learn from being a part of a team. So everything about sports tickles me. I'm very lucky. Ever since I was young, I knew I wanted to work or play. I knew pretty early on I wasn't going to be a professional athlete. I knew I wanted to play sports professionally without playing it. I consider what I do playing. Not playing a sport, but playing life, playing a game. I'm very lucky to be able to know. Most people go through their entire lives. They have no idea what they want to do with their life. I knew I wanted to be involved in sports. So when I was in high school, I joined the high school newspaper. And I took any elective that I could in high school that had to do with sports. One of these classes, my freshman year, was a sports marketing class. And I remember it vividly because I had just moved to Annandale, Virginia, the summer before my freshman year. I was living in South Florida at the time. My family moved around a lot when I was a kid. My parents split up. Then we moved to D.C. right after my 8th grade graduation, like literally that summer. And I was the new kid in town who knew nobody walking into his first freshman class. But I played sports, so I was part of the baseball team. And the baseball coach taught this sports marketing class. So I was like, oh, this is great. I get to A, learn about sports and marketing. B, I get to, grease the wheels of the new baseball coach I'm going to be playing for. One of the first projects he assigned to us was to pick someone who works in sports and write a letter to them. Why you admire them, what about them you admire, and what you aspire to be. And I picked Chris Berman. Why? I was obsessed with the NFL growing up. I watched NFL primetime every week. He had this demeanor, this very jovial way of delivering the highlights that I loved, all his little nicknames. I loved Chris Berman. He was my favorite sportscaster. I wanted to be him growing up. So I wrote him a letter. About a month or two later, I got a letter back. But it wasn't even a letter. It was a picture. Chris Berman sent me a signed headshot that said, Jared, saving a seat for you at ESPN, Chris Berman. Whew. That made my life. I was 14 years old. I knew what I wanted to do with my life. And now I was given this rocket fuel by Chris Berman. He was saving a seat for me at ESPN. My dream was crystallized. And that's what really put me on this path that you're watching now. The path to being a sportscaster, the path to being a storyteller, a reporter, an anchor, a narrator, an orator, a truth teller. Recently, so that picture's been hanging in my office, on my fridge. Wherever I move to, I bring it with me. It is a cherished memory. Recently, it's been weighing on me. Why was it weighing on me? Well, I feel sometimes in life when we attach ourselves to a certain outcome, it turns out to be more of a burden than a motivator. And while that picture and that mindset motivated me and inspired me for many years to chase this dream, I felt like I have now reached a part in my career where I have a little bit of credibility. I have built my career up to a place where I'm comfortable, not only financially, but also with my connections and my network and what I'm doing every day, that it was time to release this expectation of you are not successful unless you make it to ESPN. Over the last year or so, that picture has felt more like a weight than something that uplifted me. And I felt like it was time to release it. So, of course, as you know, we just transitioned from the year of the snake to the year of the fire horse. The year of the snake is all about shedding, releasing things that are no longer for us. And I thought it was a perfect opportunity, not only as we transition from the year of the snake to the year of the fire horse, but as I transition from my 30s to my 40s, for me to release this weight. So I gathered some of my closest friends. I have a fire pit in my backyard. I told this story about Chris Berman and how I looked up to him and how my goal and my dream is to make it in this business. And then I burned the picture. And it felt incredible. There's something special about doing things intentionally with your circle around you, supporting you and uplifting you. And it was a beautiful night. I'm not saying I'm going to wake up tomorrow and quit my job and go, move to the woods. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the weight of expectations. I'm no longer holding myself to that standard. The way that I'm going to hold my standard now is, are you a good person? Do you believe what you say? Do you act what you say? Are you all talk? Are you all bullshit? Do you try to bring truth and love and light to every situation that you're part of? The answers to those questions to me is yes. And as long as the answers are yes, no job, no amount of money, fame, or fortune, power, or influence is going to make you happy with who you are. You have to be okay with who you are as a person first, and then everything else comes from there. So it starts with gratitude, it starts with acceptance, it starts with love, and all the other material stuff is irrelevant. So I'm glad that I shared that with you. I hope that you took something from that experience, and I hope that you have enjoyed the show, because that's pretty much all I got for you here today. Episode 24 of The Morning After. Again, I appreciate you all tuning in. My last show of my 30s. The next time you hear from me, I'll be a freshly minted 40-year-old man. I don't feel 40. I don't feel a day over 30. I've heard from all my friends who are in their 40s that it's a great decade. I've got a lot to accomplish this decade, not only this platform, other platforms, other goals that I have for myself personally. It's going to be an awesome year, an awesome decade. And I'm so excited to continue this project with you guys. We're going to grow the heck out of it. This thing's going to be awesome. And the people who were in it at the ground floor, the people who have been listening to me since the Sports Grid days, since the early days of my sports betting renaissance, right? I was a local news reporter for many years, transitioned to finance, worked at Merrill Lynch, and now I'm doing the sports betting thing. Now I'm doing the podcasting thing, the hosting thing for Fox Sports Radio, and that avenue of my career, I think, has a lot of growth to it. I have a great relationship with those people, and I'm continuing to get opportunities there, and these platforms are going to be my baby, and I'm going to pour every ounce of fire, passion, and energy I have into this podcast because I love being authentic and transparent with the audience. I feel like we are lacking it in today's society. The media is trying to divide us and conquer us and make us feel small and make us feel stupid and make us feel like we should be fearing the other side when in reality, I feel like sports and this show and other shows that emulate it should be about bringing people together and seeing both sides of an argument and letting the audience decide what is the right or wrong way and what is the truth. So I love you all. Hit the like button on your way out. Episode 24 of The Morning After. I will see you next week in a new decade of my life.